liaison, and I'm very excited to have you all here today. So thank you for joining us for our first ever completely virtual event. We are moving in the direction of all things that are happening in the face of the global pandemic, and excited to explore this new territory. We think there's a lot of opportunity for us here as an organization, and we see this as a way that we can incorporate programming into our annual calendar of events moving forward in a way that we haven't in the past, that hopefully will allow more people and different people to be able to participate. So this is a new endeavor for us, and we're very excited about it. We're going to try a couple of different formats over the next few of these events that we're going to be running. And we're going to see what kind of response we get until we find a format that works best. So we are very excited to have a special speaker here today, who Chrissy Beswick, our vice chair, is going to introduce in just a moment. But before that, I just wanted to say, again, welcome. I hope everybody is safe. And I wanted to let you know that we're going to be offering programming every other week throughout the summer in this format. So pretty soon we're going to be releasing a calendar of events. So stay tuned. These, again, are free events, and we welcome your feedback on things that you would like to hear about. Right now, we anticipate that we'll be doing some things related to the global pandemic, but we want to always stay focused on our core mission and goals as well. So we want to offer meaningful professional development that women can use in the workplace. So right now is a moment of crisis, but also opportunity. And we think that there are lots of tips that can be imparted. And again, we welcome your feedback on what you would like to hear about. That all of us can use to help us to be prepared for when we do come back. And we know that it's not going to look like it did before, but whatever that looks like, what can we be doing right now to prepare for advancement in that time? So the programming will be focused, again, on where we are right now, but also where we are looking forward. Events every other week, globally like this. We would love your input. There'll be a survey at the end that's going to ask you, what you thought of it, what we can do better. Please be honest with us, because that's the way that we can help you the most and provide the best opportunities for you. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Chrissy Beswick, who will introduce our speaker.
Hi, everybody. So again, I just want to wish you all good health and safety. I hope everyone and their families are doing well. I just want to first start off by thanking our guest speaker, Dr. Amy Hoch. Today she's going to be presenting us tips on wellness and resiliency during the pandemic. We're all going through so many different changes. So we're really grateful for her for taking her time out today to speak with us. Just a few housekeeping items before we get started. During this event, you are going to be muted and your camera will be off. This way we can make sure that everybody who's participating is able to clearly hear and see our guest speaker. You can feel free to send any questions you would have during the event to Andy Watkins via the chat option on the bottom right of your screen. Andy will help us to field the questions to Amy at the end of the event. So please feel free to ask for any tips, tricks, or just general questions you might have. Now I'm going to introduce Amy. Dr. Amy Hoch is a licensed psychologist in New Jersey and in New York. She's the Associate Director of the Wellness Center at Rowan University, where she oversees clinical services, facilitates staff development and training, and provides individual and group therapy to students and supervision to the staff. She is a co-chair of the Sexual Violence Prevention Committee on campus and an advocate for violence awareness and prevention in the community. She is a past chairperson of the American College Health Association's Safety and Violence Coalition and sat on their Sexual Violence Prevention Task Force. In addition, she is also a certified trauma-focused CBT trainer and provides training, consultation, and supervision on trauma-related issues, both nationally and internationally. So again, we just really want to thank her for lending us her time and her expertise today. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Amy.
Okay. Is it to me?
Yes, it's all you now.
I can't share my screen.
Somehow I'm the presenter, so I can be made not the presenter.
This is the fun part of virtual reality right now, right? The technology of it all. Okay.
We're all learning together.
All right. So now I should be able to. Okay. So let's see. Let me just get this up. There. Okay. Hopefully everybody can see this. Yes? My name is Amy Hoch. Thank you for having me today. As you heard, a lot of my background has to do with trauma, and actually wellness and resiliency is something I talk a lot about with the clients that I work with, and as someone who oversees a team of people here at the Wellness Center, we talk a lot about this in terms of supporting ourselves through difficult times. So I am also a runner, and I kind of think in running metaphors. So I'm going to use one to kind of help us through this presentation today. And I love to run in beautiful places. So you're seeing a beautiful place that one could run in. I have not been there, but when we think about what we have been forced to kind of face with this pandemic, you know, we may not have been runners by nature. We may not have trained for this kind of thing. And in fact, we all tend to have a coping style that we have come to every situation with. We're all kind of hardwired one way or the other. Some of us might be hardwired to be more over-controlled. We like things a certain way. We like to have control over things. And some of us are more hardwired to be kind of more expressive and dynamic and impulsive in things. And there's a large range in between. And if you think about running, right, some people are hardwired and kind of also trained to be a sprinter. You know, and at the beginning of this pandemic, we were all asked, right, and kind of got the idea that, okay, this is going to be a temporary thing. We can get through this. We're kind of in fight, flight, freeze mode. We get our adrenaline going and we kind of power through. We all went to the grocery store. We got our toilet paper, right? We came up with a plan. But the longer this has gone on, we have actually been forced to kind of run the marathon that maybe we didn't actually train for. And there are very different muscles, there are very different skills involved in training for one kind of race versus the other, right? A lot of energy we might have put forth in the beginning. The problem with that over the long run is that once you use up that energy, you're taking then from this store within you that if you continue to take it at the rate you have, you're likely to kind of wear yourself down. So how do you move from one kind of race to another without actually having done the training? You might have to be doing the training on the fly, and that's what we're doing now, although we can kind of take a lot of skills from things that we've done before and think about it in relation to the pandemic. So if we think about just resiliency and well-being, globally, we want to think about resiliency as the ability to cope with adversity, the ability to push through challenges in the pursuit of opportunities. And that's an important part. It's not just the adversity part. We want to hold that other side. You know, what opportunities, as Joanne mentioned, might come from adversity and crisis. And it's really well-being is this underlying sense of happiness, peace, love, and we really think about the two as transactional. So one feeds the other. If we can have more experiences that are happy, right, loving, peaceful, calm, that feeds our sense of resiliency and we can endure over the long run. Here at Rowan, we talk about thriving and 6 components of well-being. And I'll talk about each of those today and some tips on how to use those. But the path in life that you take really depends on 3 causes, right? Your ability to manage challenges, the protection of your vulnerabilities. We all have vulnerabilities. So knowing what those are and knowing how to reduce, right, how much they impact us is important. And then always, right, skill building, enhancing our resources. So really to thrive, we have to cultivate those more durable inner strengths that we can hardwire into our nervous system. And that's a really important part of what I'll talk about today. Often it starts with physiology. We have the ability, our brains, our bodies are malleable. Despite the fact that we may each come with vulnerabilities in terms of our physical being, we can hardwire well-being, experiences of well-being into our brain so that we can call on them in times of crisis. So let's start with the first component of well-being, physical, because as I said, this is kind of the foundation. So obviously right now, because of what's going on, most people are working at home. Most people's schedule has completely changed in some way or another. Our system may have really gotten out of whack in terms of sleep, in terms of the way our day goes, given that we may have kids at home, we may have other commitments, other people working at home. So sleep hygiene is a huge issue for a lot of people right now. They've become more nocturnal potentially because there's not a structure to their day like it used to be. They can do things at different times. They have to do things at different times. So it's really important to kind of take a look at how much are you sleeping? How is the quality of your sleep? Technology and the amount of technology we're engaged in right now significantly impacts that sleep hygiene. You know, I've spent now 8 hours a day on WebEx in some capacity or another. And then I go home and might do some work and I'm on a screen too. Really being able to reduce that screen time helps, because all of the things that we're kind of taking in when we're, you know, engaging with technology in this way, takes a long time to have our bodies calm down from. So we need at least an hour before we go to sleep at night where we're really trying to let go of the technology so that we can really rest deeply. Attending to physical illness is really important right now. And obviously, given the concern about COVID, this might be something that for those of us who have maybe chronic underlying conditions, we need to take care of those things even more importantly. There's lots of ways to build our immunity. You know, vitamin C is really important. There's some studies that show that taking 1,000 milligrams of vitamin C right now is protective. Vitamin D, for us women in particular, vitamin D3, taking extra up to 10,000 IUs a day can be helpful, especially as we come out of the winter because our stores may be low. Avoiding drugs and alcohol. So a lot of people I know, because there's less time to do things, you may be noticing an increase in alcohol, even if it's like an extra glass of wine a day. We may use wine or other drugs or alcohol to cope. So this can be a vulnerable time for those of us in that position. So think about one drink impacts your anxiety, depression, feeling state, performance for up to 2 to 3 days. We know that with athletes, and we know that with just us kind of regular people who are not athletes too. So if we're more prone to anxiety right now, which we all are, right? And anxiety is contagious. And because we might be taking things in that create more anxiety right now, we have to be extra careful to avoid things that are going to add to that. Balanced nutrition is another way to reduce our vulnerability. If we're taking in more things like coffee, sugar, you know, we tend to kind of have ups and downs, crashes and kind of peaks. And really important to try to balance that out, again, as a way to help regulate how we're managing things. Protein is a good source. If we can take protein in every 3 hours, it helps to regulate our thinking and our emotions. And then exercise, you know, even if you can't get outside to do it, if you can do something inside, it can be yoga, it can be walking, right? It can be something more cardiovascular, like running, you know, or jumping rope or biking. But doing something each day, one, is going to help your sleep. Two, it's going to be a natural antidepressant, natural anti-anxiety kind of buffer. So if there's one thing you can do, that would be what I would suggest. Social well-being. So what we know from research is that social connection is really the best predictor of overall well-being throughout our lifespan. Those who stay connected to people, have friendships, or a friendship, a meaningful relationship in their life, are going to do a lot better overall. And that has gotten more complicated right now because of the distance that we have to keep. So how do we stay connected despite the distance? You know, this is one way to do it, and yet we don't get the same kind of feeling from it, right? We're not getting the same social cues for those of us who, are really people who need touch and connection that way, it can feel like a huge loss for us without that. And so just be mindful of that. No, it's not going to feel the same, but is there a way to, be doing not all meetings, right? There's ways to stay connected in meetings, but we've had a virtual lunch here at work where we just all get on at the same time and we have kind of this more relaxed chatter as opposed to what's happening in meetings all the time. So think about ways that you can stay connected despite this. Fear and scarcity, which, right, we have a lot of right now, tend to trigger things like social comparison, suffering comparisons. And so it's really important to think about, we're all suffering right now in some way. David Kessler is a researcher who does a lot of work on grief, and he wrote a great article actually, which I'm happy to share with people, just about this kind of thing that we're all feeling, which it's really hard to name right now, which is grief. There's lots of little losses in our day-to-day life, and all of us are experiencing different kinds of losses. So it's really important to validate ourselves and other people and not get caught up in that kind of comparison. Well, I'm not as bad off as you, so I shouldn't complain, or, I have it a lot worse than other people. We're all in this in some way, some form. The other thing that it's really important to do, because I mentioned that anxiety is contagious, is that limiting the amount of news that you take in is really important, because the feeds and news reports tend to repeat themselves, and you can sit all day long and take in information that creates more and more anxiety inside. So one, limit the amount of time, an hour or less, and also be mindful of the sources where you're getting that information, so that it might not just be all about what is not well going on, but that also incorporates some stories that are hopeful and inspiring, so that we're getting a more balanced view. Otherwise, we can really kind of take off with that anxiety and get caught up in it. Financial is probably the hardest one to feel that you have the most control over right now. And there's a lot of anxiety, and very valid anxiety, right, for a lot of us about what's going to happen in terms of our overall security, long term, as well as short term. So some of the things I think about when it comes to this are, one, just how much understanding do you have about finances and skills? If that is not something that you feel that you have a good foundation in, where can you get that information? The more you feel like you know and have a sense of things, the better off we feel. So do you have a budget? How are you going to change that budget right now to adapt, right, to the circumstance? Who might you ask who might have some expertise in that? Our HR financial advisors right now might have good information in terms of helping us look at, right, our own particular circumstances, and kind of holding, again, that balance between, what we might be seeing and hearing on the news, and again, what we might be having to hold longer term. And then there's a lot of good information out there right now about specific relief related to COVID. So take a look at links and resources that might provide you with that information. Because again, right, there is a lot of uncertainty and unknowing about things related to this. But the more you know about financial preparedness, your budget, what your particular circumstances, the better off you'll be. Emotional. So this can be a pretty big area for a lot of people, and I think is often a space where we can do a lot of things that we have more control over. So again, what we know from research are a couple things. We do better, we feel happier when every day we intentionally decide to do something productive, which can be as small as making your bed, taking a shower, right, to something larger, complete a project that we've been working on at work. The other thing is that, again, intentionally, not just kind of waiting for it to happen, but intentionally deciding I'm going to do something that's going to give me some kind of joy today. Again, these are things that we may have to rethink right now given what we have been used to doing. But nonetheless, are there things that we can do in terms of reading, reading, in terms of binge watching a particular show we really like, in terms of just going outside and sitting in nature and taking in the sunshine, which today is a great day to do. And then lastly, playfulness. And this becomes really important because, again, if we're being inundated with kind of anxiety and worry, which can create that underlying feeling of sadness and loss and depression, we actually want to give ourselves an opportunity to be playful. If you don't have kids in your house, sometimes we think as adults we can't be playful. We were just talking before about how we were doing things at work, and we were talking about dressing up as our favorite 80s character, and this can be a hard skill for those of us who tend to be a little bit more over-controlled, who have a hard time relaxing or kicking back and not, being as productive as we might like. So these 3 areas really require a lot of balance. So it might be doing something new and different, doing funny faces with your kids, using big gestures, turning on some music. We like here at the Wellness Center to turn on Taylor Swift on a Friday afternoon sometimes and, shake it off. So think about what you have within the space that you're in that you can do that. The next thing would be to really invite radical acceptance. And this is a core emotional skill that we can have a lot of trouble with. If you're like me, when I first heard that, I couldn't go outside, that my gym had closed, that I wasn't going to be able to do kind of my regular routine, I kind of willfully fought against that for a while. Well, that's not fair. I have to get to the gym. Like, what? I don't know what I'm going to do without that. For me, that's something I look forward to every day. So that willfulness can be something that can kind of keep us from actually accepting the problem and actually finding another, way of doing things. This is where psychological flexibility comes in. How can we move from that willful place? And just think for a minute for yourselves, like, is there anything you're still kind of holding on to that it's still hard to accept? One of the people that works here with me was saying, she had to go back and move in with her parents for a while, and she kept her suitcase filled. She didn't unpack her suitcase because for her, that meant accepting that things had changed. But once she did that, things became easier. Doesn't mean you have to like it. Doesn't mean, right, you're gung-ho about it, but it means you can move to another place of willingness. And even sometimes just the act of, think about how you hold your body when you're willful, right? We can get pretty rigid and tense. And just sometimes, opening our hands and kind of saying, I'm willing, can go a long way in terms of moving in that direction. And then cultivating courage, curiosity, and calm is especially important, today. If you don't practice any other skill, mindfulness would be the skill that I would encourage you to start to practice now. And mindfulness doesn't have to be sitting on a cushion, and oming, but it can be simply like taking a breath and just noticing how I'm feeling, right? Or noticing what's outside of myself right now, what I'm hearing, what I'm seeing, what I'm smelling. And just taking that moment to be kind of present right here and now. Self-soothe can go along with that in terms of, because we can be so anxious right now, how can we ground ourselves and soothe ourselves when we start to go into that overwhelm? So one of the things, I like to practice is, again, just taking that moment sometimes and doing a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 activity. And that might be just asking yourself, and think right now in whatever space that you're in, what are 5 things you can see right now? What are 4 things that you can hear if you take a moment and really listen? What are 3 things that you can touch without even moving? What are 2 things that you can smell? And 1 thing you can taste. So just take a minute and notice that. And just that minute, right, can kind of reground us. And we can get back to what we're doing, but it's a nice way to be focused. Journaling, you know, if that's something that you find helpful, is a great skill to kind of get out of your head and onto something tangible. We use the term name it to tame it. So journaling, or even just identifying how you're feeling, what you're thinking in your head and noticing it, has the ability to kind of calm our brains down. So finding some way to do that, if you find that helpful, is another great skill. And then I think overall, you know, the skill that we can kind of think of broadly is this idea of facing our fears. We have a lot of fear right now. And for those of us who've not been coming into an office, who've been working from home, who are thinking about starting to maybe come back once the stay-at-home order lifts, to start to do things that you haven't been doing now for a couple weeks. Just notice if there's some fear involved with that. And what is real fear? Like, what is a real threat and what isn't? We don't always know the answer to that, but we can kind of get stuck sometimes avoiding things and staying avoidant. And sometimes that actually increases our fear. So are there things in your life right now that you're afraid to do that actually there's not a real threat that you can take a step towards? When we avoid too long, we can start to feel worse, more anxious, more depressed. So community is another dimension of well-being. Just going to check the time here. So when we feel connected to something larger than ourselves, that could be faith, that could be a community of people, that could be a belief system, we feel better. We feel that our life is more meaningful, and it helps us to feel and cultivate what's important to us in terms of often giving to other people, not just being self-focused. And obviously, right, there are times to be self-focused. That's important to do. And if we're feeling really depressed and down and fearful, often a way to get ourselves out of that place is to think about doing something for others. So how can we kind of think about the perspective of what's going on as a global community? What actions could we take to help in that regard? Is there a charity we can give money to? Is there a place we can volunteer? Is there someone we can send a text to, right? Is there a way we can practice and sit in our faith, if that is, you know, what this means to us, even if we can't go to a particular place to practice? And then recognize what you've done. So it's really important. And again, for some of us who are very driven and focused on the productivity side of things, we might often have a more difficult time kind of celebrating and acknowledging what we have done. And that becomes hugely important because, again, I mentioned that hardwiring into your brain. The way that any of these skills will linger and endure is if you can spend time really thinking about sitting in the good feelings that you get when you practice some of these skills, the good feeling you get when you, right, kind of practice giving to others. The more you can marinate in that almost, the better able it is to kind of get into your brain and stay there so that we can access it. And then generosity and gratitude. You know, there's a lot of research that's been done on, you know, a gratitude practice, whether it be journaling gratitude or just, you know, taking a minute every morning when you wake up to think about what you're grateful for. And it can be really hard to do that right now because we're often focused on, right, the ways in which life is not being so helpful to us right now. And then lastly, we have purpose. So again, because things have changed drastically for all of us, this might be a good place to kind of come back to and think about, maybe not just, you know, too big a question, but even this idea of, I mean, what are the values that are important to you? You know, values are our compass. So our goals may have changed right now because of what we can and can't do, but our values may not have changed. Maybe they have, but sometimes coming back to that question of what are the 3 most important values in my life? Right? We don't want to actually identify too many. That gets to kind of be too diffuse. But if you can identify 3 and think about how do I live those each day? And in particular right now, at the end of this quarantine, what would you most like to accomplish? When you think about like what is important to you. And then from that, once you've done that, what are daily steps you can take? And how do you reward yourself for taking those? Sometimes just sitting with some questions, you know, kind of help you to feel like you're attending to this, even if you can't get out there and do all the things you want to do. So, right, what gives your life meaning? Why are you here? What sparks your passion right now? And it may be different than, you know, what you thought was the case when you were kind of day in and day out at a workspace that's different from now. And then again, visualize those things, really marinate in those things, because again, the more we can kind of hold on to those things, the more they will help to change our brain. So I wanted to just take us through a short practice, because loving kindness meditation is, again, if I could offer you know, kind of one thing to take away from today and practice if you don't already do some kind of loving kindness meditation. There's a huge body of research on how this has huge positive impacts in terms of emotions, in terms of thoughts, in terms of relationships, chronic pain, overall well-being. You really can't go wrong with doing some kind of loving kindness. So just take a minute and get comfortable. And if you want to close your eyes or keep them open, I'm going to leave that up to you. But I'm going to ring my bell here to start us off, and I'm just going to walk us through a short meditation, and then we'll close up soon after that, and then we'll get to questions. Begin by simply taking a breath with awareness. Not trying to change the breath or fix it in some way. Just being fully present with the full duration of the in-breath and the full duration of the out-breath. If your mind wanders away from the breath, which it is prone to do, then without judgment, simply bring yourself back to the next natural inhalation or exhalation. And now, very gently, allow your awareness to move from your breath to your heart center. As best you can, try and find a memory or feeling sense of a time when you experienced a strong sense of loving kindness, either from someone or towards someone. It might have been the first day you met your life partner, the day a child or grandchild was born. It might have even been a particular afternoon with your favorite pet, or a time when you felt warm appreciation after helping or being helped by someone. The idea is not to find the perfect experience or image. The idea is, as best you can, to recreate the warm, tender, or positive feelings associated with prior experiences of loving kindness. For just a moment, allow those feelings to grow. And now in your mind's eye, gently bring into focus an image of someone you care about. A person you already have existing warm feelings for, may feel love toward, or may feel a sense of positive connection with. It doesn't have to be a perfect relationship or one without conflict. The idea is to find an image or feeling sense of someone you know whom you already have warm feelings for. As best you can, hold this image or feeling sense of this person in your heart. And now, from the feelings of love and kindness in the center of your chest, extend warm wishes to this person you care about. Using this phrase, silently repeat to yourself, may this person be at ease. May they be content with their life. May they be joyful. May they feel safe and secure. And now, with warm, loving care, gently turn your attention back to the sensation of your breath, allowing the image or feeling sense of this person to be released. Remembering that you can carry with you throughout your day these warm feelings of love and kindness that you were able to generate. Knowing that you can always find your heart center when needed, and make a kind-hearted commitment to integrate this practice of loving kindness into your life. When you're ready, come back to the room. So as I mentioned, loving kindness is one of these things that actually has an impact on us anywhere from 20 minutes to 4 hours after you do loving kindness meditation. It allows us to be more kind of flexible. It allows us to feel more connected to ourselves, to other people. And it's something, again, the more you visualize that, the more you practice it, you just have to kind of think of that person, and it cultivates that feeling. So think about, right, as we go back to that kind of race metaphor, my running metaphor, pace yourself over the next few weeks and months, because we don't know how long we're kind of in this and what changes are going to come. Rhythm through rituals is important, and don't think you can't actually have your kids, other family members be involved in some of these things. The more you can kind of put things in your day. Your kids can do the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 with you. They can do loving kindness meditation. Don't leave them out. Actually, when you incorporate them into it, one, they learn how to regulate better, and it gives you also a little bit of a break, or if you can't find the kind of time to do it on your own. And then don't shy away from running in the rain. So again, coming back to that, just pausing and breathing, kind of recognize what's going on, allow it to just be there. Investigate with kindness, when you're feeling an edge, frustration, anxiety, and just nurture with self-compassion. We're all going through something. We're all suffering. It's okay to be kind to yourself. Give yourself a break. I'll just leave you with, right, not all storms come to disrupt your life. Some come to clear your path. And this might give us a perfect opportunity to think about the things we want to actually let back into our lives right now. Right? A lot may have been lost, but we might want to think intentionally about what will you do with your one wild and precious life, even in the midst, right, of the wild, which we might be in now. Okay, that's it for me. Thank you all. We're going to take some questions, I think. I am going to stop sharing.
Hi, can you all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, it's Andy. How are you guys? So we have a few questions from the attendees. Thank you so much, Amy, for your presentation. I was deeply engaged, and I was writing some notes of my own because they were really good tips that you were giving. The one personally, if I can speak on the one that you spoke to me, would be the mindfulness with gardening. So I started doing some of that and just going outside and, you know, sweeping my step. It just is so, I don't know, therapeutic just to go outside and just be, you know, with nature and things. So that's one thing that I took from your presentation. So um, another question that we had was advice for keeping children's spirits up during this time. I know that you spoke a little bit on that, but a lot of us have children at home and just trying to navigate that. What would your recommendation be for that?
Yeah. Listen, I think just like us, you know, we want to think balanced. I think we want to it's really important to validate that they are also feeling frustrated. They're feeling upset. They're feeling kind of out of the normal routine. And so don't be too quick to just do the cheerleading part of that to like help them feel better, because you know, one of the things that is a good practice for kids right now is to learn resiliency. And the only way to learn resiliency is actually to go through the adversity of it. So teach them, right? Listen, mommy, daddy, you know, we are having a hard time too. We feel sad. We feel upset. This is frustrating. Let's get out our frustration. You know, we can teach them to do some things that involve that part of it. So remember the validation part, because if you go too quick to the problem solve part, actually your brain feels more anxious. So think about a seesaw and think about validate kids first, and then, okay, how can we kind of change things? How can we make you feel better? And again, I think doing some family rituals are great, teaching them mindfulness, you know, doing something playful with them to say, listen, we've been sitting inside all day, like let's get up and kind of play Simon Says, or, you know, do some jumping jacks, or the same things I talked about for us are going to be the same ways we want to engage our kids, and to talk about how, you know, we don't know how long this is going to last, and how can we still do some of the things that were fun before.
Right.
Yeah, it's tough, but it's a good opportunity. Think of it as this: it's a good opportunity for them to learn skills early. You know, you're not being a bad parent if you aren't making it all okay. You know, there's just no way to do that.
Thank you for that. We have another question. It says, working from home, I had lofty ideas that I can manage my time from virtual museum tours, spend more time bonding with my children, but I'm exhausted with the weight of keeping up with the workload. Discouraged with the news feed, I have to turn off news conferences. I want to retreat and pull a blanket over my head sometimes. Will this feeling go away, or am I seriously depressed?
Well, I think you are not alone in that. I think everyone feels that way at some point or another, because we're kind of in that place of, as I mentioned, realizing, wait a minute, this isn't the sprint. I have taken a wrong turn, or we got lost, and now I'm having to run a whole lot longer than I thought. We too here, I'll tell you, at the Wellness Center, we said, oh, we're going to have so much time to do all these things we never got a chance to do before. And there's no way. I mean, one thing that's very real is, and there are a lot of articles out about it, Zoom, WebEx, you know, virtual tele is exhausting. It takes extra out of you. You're doing all kinds of new things every single day because this is a new way of living. That takes a lot of energy from us. So I think, again, be kind to yourself. If you need, you know, the extra, the day in bed, you know, or the mini vacations throughout the day of where I'm just going to like take 5 minutes and, you know, go sit in the corner, or, you know, sit outside on the porch. I think now more than ever, we need extra time to balance out the different kind of exhaustion. And like I said, also grief. Now, if you can't get out of bed, if you are losing weight or gaining weight, you know, in excess, because you're also going to see fluctuations in that depending on your activity level. If you're crying excessively, you know, if you have thoughts about hurting yourself, those are signs that, right, you're moving in a direction, or you already are in a place of maybe, you know, what we call more clinical depression. And then it would be good to, you know, reach out to your primary care physician, or, you know, your insurance company has places that in terms of your insurance, where, you know, everyone's doing telehealth right now, so they can do a telehealth screen with you, or, you know, connect you with a therapist in your area. I mean, we're happy to help here as well. We have plenty of resources in the area that we can help with.
As a Rowan employee, what kind of support do students need right now?
Well, I mean, they need the same support we do. I think they need to know that things are harder, that it's okay if they don't hold themselves to the same standards. You know, as a university, we've relaxed some standards for students right now, so we should do that for ourselves too. I think students, you know, financial worry for students is huge. When we've done events on campus, students will say to us, you know, financial burden, worry is one of the top things for them. I think they need resources. We need to be getting those resources to them. We have we have an emergency task force. They are able to get emergency funds, but it's often reaching out to students and initiating some contact with them and saying, what do you need? I think about those 6 dimensions of well-being and say, how are you doing, you know, with each of these? Like, where can I help you the most? And there are different resources on campus, I think, for each of those as well. I think they just need to know that, you know, they often need to know that somebody cares, that we haven't forgotten about them here, which we haven't. I heard a great story. My friend's daughter graduated on Saturday, and she worked in events planning here at the university, and she was in the house and she heard pomp and circumstance coming from outside her house. And lo and behold, 3 of her bosses were out there with a megaphone playing, you know, pomp and circumstance. And, you know, they had taken the time to go out there and do that. And I'm not saying we have to do that, but I think it could just be as simple as an email to say, you know, how are you doing right now? I'm thinking about you. And again, that keeps that connection, which is huge, that social connection. We're thinking about community right now and how as a community we can support each other.
Can you talk a little bit about how our brains work with multitasking? I find myself trying, even during this session, doing 4 things at once and multiple tabs. This can't be good.
That's a great question. And yeah, I think we can often feel, if we just take a minute and think about it, it is overload. And you may not just be doing them now like tangibly, but you're also having to do it across, right, some kind of virtual platform. It really is, and research would show that even though, you know, many people who would see themselves as multitaskers, they feel like they get a lot done. Often performance, you know, the quality of it, the way you feel about the end result is much less, you know, optimal. So trying to, again, use that mindfulness to say, all right, what can I focus on right now? Now, it may be that you only spend 5 minutes on one task and then go to another, but you don't have 4 tabs open. You know, you're texting somebody while you're also trying to listen to this, you know, webinar, and, you know, trying to jot down, you know, your to-do list for later when you get home. So it's hard. And this is the practice of mindfulness itself, is to notice when you're multitasking and to say, take that breath, right? Recognize you're doing it, and to say, all right, what's the most important thing, or what's the thing that is actually going to give me the most joy right now? What's the easiest thing maybe to get done so I can take it off my list? And when you find yourself getting pulled back into, which I do every single day, you know, I find myself then doing 4 things, and it's the practice of mindfulness is just saying, wait, my brain has now gotten into this like multitask mode. Let me bring it back. You'll be practicing it as you try to do it. And remember, that's why it's called a practice, because it's not like we ever get perfect at it. So again, be kind to yourself if you find all those tabs open again on your computer.
Thank you for that. We have 2 more questions.
Okay.
What is the best way to learn more about love and kindness meditation? And how best way to involve 15-year-olds in mindfulness and love and kindness, so teenagers, getting them involved.
Yeah, so there's a lot of you could Google love and kindness meditation and probably get 15 different scripts or guided love and kindness meditations. So you can do that. There are some great books, and maybe even after this, I can put together a bit of a resource list, and we could send it out to the participants if that would be helpful. I have, you know, adolescents love technology. Maybe they don't love it as much anymore, but there are a lot of good apps that are free, and there are some that cost, but a lot of the adolescents will use, there's one called Smiling Mind, there's one called Headspace. I like My Life. There are, so that might be a journaling one. So there are some. Breathe to relax. The number 2 is a good one to just practice breathing. So there's a bunch of different apps that I think adolescents like, but I would again say, since there's so much technology one is using right now, the other thing is to just think, you don't have to do anything different to practice mindfulness. You mentioned gardening. So what's something that you do every day that you can just be more mindful about? Brushing your teeth. Just noticing the sensations, the smell of the toothpaste, the feel of the brush against your skin, taking a shower, noticing the smell of the body wash, how hot the water is or not, where your mind is going, associations to things. So if you have trouble finding time to do it, you can pick something that you do every day and just bring fresh eyes to it. Right, and think about those senses. But I think for some adolescents, I find boys have a harder time thinking about doing some of the apps. Calm is another app, but there's a cost to Calm. But LeBron James does a great mindfulness meditation on Calm, and he'll talk about his own meditation experience. So sometimes looking to athletes or people that you might kind of look up to and look at what their practice might be is helpful for adolescents.
Okay, thank you so much. We have about 3 more minutes. And I think we have one last question. And you spoke about taking vitamins for health and wellness. And do you recommend, is there a difference between like Walmart or Target brand, or should you go to a health food store and specifically buy like your everyday 1-a-day vitamins, or are they all the same?
Well, I think they're different. In health food stores, we know like they're not necessarily controlled by the FDA. So I think if you have a health practitioner that you work with, I think sometimes they can recommend a good brand. I think as long as you get D3, so for we all need D3, but for women in particular, we tend to be lower in it, especially as we get older because of our bone density. And actually D3 has been found to be more beneficial to us than calcium, let's say, right? D3 impacts our breast health, our bone health, and our mood, because D3 is what we get from the sun, along with K. So both of those things together are going to actually help improve our mood and be protective of our overall system when it comes to immunity. Liposomal vitamin C is what some of these studies that have come out of China with the COVID has been shown to be the most beneficial in terms of it getting into your system and staying in, and you want that 1,000 milligrams. So there are different companies that do liposomal. So you just want to kind of look for what's around, what's in your area, what your PCP might recommend.
Thank you so much, Amy. This has been so helpful and pleasant, and I hope everyone got out of it what I did as well. I think Joanne might come back on to say a few words in the end, but I just want to thank everyone for coming. I want to thank Amy for speaking. We also have our next event with Amy next Tuesday, which is May 19th at 5 p.m. So tell your friends and your colleagues. They're more than welcome to join us. You just have to register, which that will open up at the end of this. And I think that is all.
Thanks, everyone.
Christy's going to come on and do our closing.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, I'm here. Thank you guys so much for joining us today, for really diving in with us on this first little experiment into our virtual programming world. It's been fun for us as the ACE Network board, and really just very rewarding, Amy, to get to hear you give us all this really wonderful advice. This is the first virtual call or virtual meeting that I've been on that I've actually felt better leaving. So it's very nice. Thank you for that. So again, like Andy said, we're going to have a lot of programming coming up. We'll be offering This again next week. We also have a full slate of programming that we're working on developing now. So please check your emails, check our website. And at the end of this meeting, just a quick reminder, there'll be a very brief survey. It's about 3 questions long. Feel free to tell us what you need, what we can do to help you continue to grow and continue to thrive during this time. That's what we're here for. So any ways that we can sort of tweak our programming to help you in that support, we're here for it. So again, thank you guys so much for joining. We look forward to seeing you at a next event very soon. Have a great day.